If you've played Granblue Fantasy, Granblue Fantasy Versus, and Granblue Fantasy Relink, you'll notice certain characters and bosses that are kind of out of the ordinary compared to the other characters around them. Either a random large being or a being almost indistinguishable from a Sky Dweller, both of which holding a unique and godlike power. These are the Primal Beasts. Over time, more and more information about Primal Beasts has shown itself throughout the story, from the start of the game until now, and at times through a Primal Beasts Fate episodes. Unfortunately, people still end up misunderstanding this race. So for this video, I will be talking about Granblue Fantasy's fifth and foreign race, the Primal Beasts. This is so that way everyone can be on the same page. It will speak about their history, their powers, traits, the difficult lives they led, and more. So, who and what are the Primal Beasts? The Primal Beasts are said to be created as living weapons with godlike power by another race called the Astrals to do their bidding. With their living weapons, the Astrals use their creations to subjugate the Sky Dwellers 2,000 years ago from the present time of the main story. The Primals followed these orders without hesitation, knowing nothing else about the world and only knowing the reason for their existence and their masters. While the four Sky Dweller races have traits that allow you to know which race they belong to, the Primal Beasts have the most variety to them, as all of them look individually different from one another. They're usually created as dragons, beasts, machines, humanoids, and more. The humanoids are at times named after mythological figures, though Primal Beasts are not the mythological figures from mythology at all, as said by the game. Though that said, anything can be made a Primal Beast so long as they have a core. The Primal Beast core is a characteristic each Primal has in common, because they are the core itself. To explain further about that, how a Primal Beast is created is through an Astral's power known as origination, alongside a Sky Realm core. Through use of astral power, it is used to create the Primal's pre-primal state, a formless, ethereal state of being that is a concept in using a Sky Realm core, the thing only Astrals can create and mass produce, in order to have the concept the Astrals created to manifest it into the world as a living being. Pre-primal state literally also means before primal, as a means of saying this is the state they are in before gaining a core and becoming a primal beast. You cannot be a true primal beast without a core. However, considering that the coreless primals are of the same origin and is simply an extension of the original primal's power that they were created from, they can still be called a primal. It is in the moment when their pre-primal state is put together with the core that they become the primal core itself. When they manifest into the world, however, they aren't the core, but the bodies created for them. How they were intended to look as they carry out their roles. The core then becomes the thing that sustains their life and body. This is how primal beasts are created and born. In addition to a primal's pre-primal state, their duties, goals, personality, skills, and power are also added into the mix upon merging it with the core as they finally manifest. This is why these things are said to be predetermined before their birth. As they manifest, the core then becomes the thing that sustains their life and form. If they are fatally wounded, however, they end up demanifesting back into core form. As a result, they regenerate and sleep for hundreds of years. The core form or core state goes by another name called the dormant state. The name references this very action where they sleep and recover for hundreds of years. After they are done, they end up rematerializing into the world again through the core. But if the core itself is destroyed, then the primal dies, and the astral power that holds them together disperses, and the primal loses their form as they turn into conceptual nothingness, as they lose their means of existing in the world, as they turn back into the pre-primal state. And it is due to their inactivity and what could happen, their core form are their most vulnerable state. There's also another weakness primal beasts have, and that is the chaos matter. Power from otherworld beings that Beelzebub ended up gaining the power of. With this power, when a primal is struck fatally with it, they will just flat out die and not return to core form. Beelzebub did this to Lucifer, assassinating him on the spot. Primals are shown to also be able to control themselves in core form if they have enough energy to do so and manifest from it. Additionally, when primal beasts are dubbed weapons of the astrals, the weapons being stated are the cores itself, like for example the diviners. They were weaponized as tracking devices for the phoenix, and are only called as such due to the infusion of the phoenix's ashes with their cores in the process of creating a primal beast, therefore dubbing them tracking devices. Through this process as well, they became phoenix-empowered primal beasts. Then there's the Japanese name for a primal beast called Star Crystal Beast. It references directly how a primal beast is a core. Star represents their origin and what they are made out of, astral power. Crystal is the core, and beast represents the physical manifestation of the concept, which doesn't literally have to be a beast. Also, as a brief mention, primals aren't gods. They're meant to be godlike, and that is the narrative irony about them. Characters and beings meant to be perfect, but really aren't. There are also times where they are said to not be gods either, like with Versusia, who is the sky god Bahamut, saying that the primal, the world, who is the creator of the Arcarum primals, is a false idol. It is in reference to him calling himself a god. The moon also says he is not a god. It is not directly said in the localization, but is in Japanese. Zoe says she is not divine, as a means of her saying she is not God. Managarm is quoted as divine, as a means of also saying it's not a god. When a primeval god was said to be causing trouble, the crew immediately took that as a hint toward the fact that it was actually a primal beast. Some primals in the sky realm have been deified to be worshipped.
Koko wa 目覚めたか。起動状態に問題はなさそうだな。ならば次は初期情報の相互確認だ。お前の名と役割は認識しているか。ああ、私の名はルシフェル。役割は空の民に見られる特有の現象、進化の研究及び観察。
During the creation process, a primal is given a role. This role is the reason or purpose for what the astral created the individual primal for. You would at times see primals refer to this as the reason for their existence and their very nature. At times, their fate.
そのために生み出されたあまたの獣たちは、空に渦巻く感情と進化に触れ、願いを知り、生じてしまった矛盾に翻弄され、戦いという己の役割に背を向けて願いを取る者、役割が呪縛となり苦しむ者。これからどうする？天使長サンダルフォンか。何も変わらぬ。私たちはフェニックスを追う。
結局、牧者にはそれしかない定めよ。
They all have a natural inclination to follow that role because it is a part of them and is thus said to be their very nature to follow it. It is a part of them in the sense that it is something that steers their personality in the direction of completing said role, because everything about primals was determined the very moment they were created. For example, their personalities, how they look, their blood, their powers, and their purposes are considered artificial. Primals are all artificial lives and the facsimiles of life itself given form by the astrals. Regarding their personalities, as I said previously, these things go into the creation of a primal beast. But when it comes to a primal's role, well, let's take coding, for example. When you type in a command line and type in the instructions of what something is supposed to do based on what it interacts with, that's essentially what a primal role is. A technological part of themselves that represents their nature as weapons of the astrals that primals face, because they all have free will and desires. It causes them to act autonomously in a certain way according to their role. Athena is another example of this as well. She was made to protect people as the primal beast of the Aegis. Whenever she goes into combat, she cannot stop due to her role. When she heard of what Medusa did to the townspeople, she goes after her to negotiate, only to find herself fighting her outside of her own control. This has actually happened multiple times as Athena has been chasing Medusa for decades, only to end up fighting. And during these fights, Athena looks sad because she doesn't want to fight. Lyria absorbs a part of her power so she can control herself better. Athena's true thoughts about Medusa were those of friendship. Let's check out another example of how the primal beast Tefnut was being influenced by her role.
今日は随分と話して久しぶりに疲れましたね。まあ、たまには悪くありませんか。
テフヌと私を見ろ。
こんなことを相談するわけにもいきませんしね。
あなたたちのコアにある私の肺があなたたちの認知を歪めたの。私を昔からの仲間と思うように。
そのようなことが可能ということは、私たちは永遠に。フェニックスにまつわることで彼らにこれ以上迷惑をかけたくもありませんし、余計なことを考えないで済むよう真面目にフェニックスを追いかけるべきか。いえ、それは結局いっそ永遠に眠ってしまう方が楽なのかも。何を考えて。
フェニックスが死んでしまったら、あの戦将獣たちはもしかしたら眠りについてしまうかもしれません。なんだって？牧者は空の世界を支配や管理するために作られたわけではありませんし、破空戦争にも参加していません。最初からフェニックスを捕まえるためだけに作られたフェニックス追跡装置です。ですが、彼女が死んでしまったら、その使命を失ってしまいます。使命を半ばで失った聖少獣は、活動停止に追い込まれる危険性が高い。牧者は目的が限定されている分、その目的が消えてしまうことは、生きる希望を失うようなものです。でも、フェニックスは捕まえられない。だから彼らは、それ以外の方法で自己防衛に動いているんです。得意点の抹殺。彼らは防衛本能に従って、これを実行しようとしています。得意点がこの世から消えれば、フェニックスは死ぬ手段を失うから。
なぜ星の民は、そんな使命を背負わせた？
彼らは、聖少獣のことなんて、何とも思っていないからですよ。
Tefnut makes for an excellent example of a role's influence, because ordinarily she's a very lazy person, but her role makes her seek out the Phoenix. It's all she had to live for. But through meeting Lamretta, while speaking slightly vaguely about her issue by calling her role a job, and sharing a drink with her, she gained the push she needed to continue living. Now, according to the Astrals, a primal not acting on their role is a malfunction, so they would end up being disposed of in some way. A primal acting on their role, like how Athena was in fighting Medusa, or how Tefnut is supposed to revert to core form after this moment, is coldly seen as working as intended.
ここから、ほんの少しだけ青少獣の気配に似た感じがしました。
おそらく、元は青少獣のコアだったものだろう。
割れちまってるな。
いかに青少獣が不変不死の存在であったとしても、ここまでコアを砕けば再起動は不可能だ。砦で聞いた言い伝えの青少獣の慣れの果てかもしれん。
死んじゃってたんですね。
青少獣はそれこそ星の数ほど作られた。中にはこうして壊れたものもあっただろう。
All primals are immutable and immortal, meaning they aren't shapeshifters, so they cannot change into whatever they want and are stuck in the way they were created, as well as being unaffected by time passing. The only way to put an end to a primal beast's immortality and their entire being is through the destruction of their core. If you happen to see anyone saying otherwise in any way, they did not read enough of the story of the game. For example, you'll see some using this screenshot to say they could when it comes to their bodies and such. But that's not even what the screenshot means. It just again means primals are cores, and that those things don't really apply from a technological standpoint of being a core, but they do from a mortal standpoint when it comes to when they manifest from said core. Primals were intended to be designed and created to act a specific way, as seen with what it says for Rosetta. Everything was predetermined through astrals on how a primal is created, like how a male primal is created to be biologically male, and a female primal is biologically female, and have a fixed design because they're immutable. They're unable to turn into different species or anything else. Primal beasts do not have lifespans and are considered to not have a soul. This is because they are immortal, so it doesn't make sense for them to have a lifespan, and their immortality stems from their core. They're also inorganic beings that look organic, but are close enough to the real thing. They can eat and drink, yet do not require the need to. All of that is assumed to turn into energy when they do this. Primals don't seem to have hearts either, but whenever it is brought up, it's meant to be in the figurative sense. So they can figuratively have a heart, as in being capable of being able to care about something. Cracks have once been shown on a primal's skin, like Zoe's, for example, when she was pushing herself too hard to fend off enemies alone.
大きい。力がまだ出しきれない。私をここに置いていけ。犠牲は一番少なくなるはずだ。
待つのだ。君一人を残してなど。
だが、もう守りきる力が残っているかも。私にはわからないんだ。
Or when Medusa was stabbed and expressed anger at her skin apparently breaking. But primals seem to have a kind of small healing factor when it comes to wounds, so long as they aren't fatal. When Baldur was injured in the woods after some inexperienced first aid from 2 children, he recovered far faster than the average human, albeit still kind of injured, then fully heals in a few days, good as new, as if it was never there. The injury Baldur has gained would generally leave a human being incapacitated or killed, which shows the resilience of a primal beast and part of why they're called immortal and immutable. You may have seen a similar instance, such as when Belial was shot through the chest by Versusia, but got back up injured and is still capable of speaking.
やっぱり得意点2つってのはきついって。ファーさん。
ベリアル、起き上がれるのなら俺の役に立て。
Something else that is also seen as immutable are primal roles, the reason for their creation in an autonomous part of themselves. It is also said that it is only natural that primals stay largely the same over time, meaning it is unnatural if they were not unchanging, as it would show they are not a primal. Like how it was suspected that a character named Neruko wasn't a primal, and it turned out she was just created by another version of Bahamut to be a singularity. While primals are said to be immutable and cannot change on their own, other things and people are capable of changing them. An example of this can be seen when a fairy used his power to turn Yggdrasil into a younger version of herself, or when Tiamat is given the Phoenix power and becomes Tiamat or Omega. Cosmos also used her own power to evolve the Xenoprimal beasts as well, and gave them the ability to evolve to better adapt to the ways of the Sky Realm. A primal beast's immutability is depicted as a tragic part of the plot, because everyone around them changes while they do not. It is a representation of their creators, the Astrals, and where they came from, the Astral Realm. A place in another dimension depicted to be a perfect yet stagnant world. A world that is far more advanced than the Sky Realm, but doesn't progress and change. The advanced practices of the Astrals when they first landed in the Sky Realm even caused the Sky Realm itself to advance in its growth. So this is all meant to be literal and not metaphorical. A character who revolves around the topic of immutability and immortality is Nezha. He's someone who seeks to find a way to do other things outside of the way he is programmed, and find some means of change, because he is tired of endlessly doing the one thing he was created to do, fighting and nothing more. As Nezha was created to do battle, he naturally loved fighting. But in order to seek out change, he started to learn, read, and pick up other skills and hobbies. At the end of his Fate episode, he even questions if he has finally found some means of change. But it's hard for him to tell, so he doesn't know. Thinking primals aren't immutable is like a denial of his existence. It's a whole entire established dynamic between the ever-changing sky and the unchanging star. They are created by the stars and over time, loved by the skies.
私は、そこの彼女も同じく、正確には青少獣とは言えない。
ずっと、青少獣だと思ってたけど。
青少獣の本体ではない、と言うべきか。他のすべての青少獣たちのように、コアを持っているわけではないんだ。
それって、ちょっとメドシアナに似てるわね。メドシアナにコアはなくて、私と二人のお姉ちゃんたち、三人から派生した存在よ。
それじゃあ、メドシアナにメドゥーサちゃんたち、ゴルゴン三姉妹がいるように、ゾイちゃん、あなたにも別に本体がいるってことになるかしら？
ああ。私たちの本体の名前は、コスモス。2000年以上前に星の世界で作られ、長きにわたり空の世界を見守ってきた青少獣。
In the 8th anniversary event story, it was at this time that it was revealed that primals without cores aren't really primals. Because primals are cores, so you can't really be one without it. But coreless primals are called primals out of convenience, because they run on astral power and have similar origins in how they're created. Astrals create primal beasts, and there are primals who are capable of creating familiars or summons that are like primal beasts. Coreless primals are offshoots of the original primal that created them. Like, for example, Zoe's wyverns or Medusa's Medusiana. As Ennio would say, the wolf Kidoimos is an extension of her power. The same goes for the owl perched on Athena, Glafkos. The journal entry for Baal also says this same kind of thing when it comes to his cat familiar named Hannibal. In Granblue vs. Rising, in Lucilius's intro against Zoe, Lucilius calls Zoe a shadow, whereas the Japanese text says, The English translation for the JP text is more specific and calls out Cosmos. This is all in reference to the fact that Zoe isn't the true primal beast of arbitration, despite being an arbitrator. Because Zoe was created by Cosmos, who is the true primal beast of arbitration. Zoe is like her substitutes as Cosmos rests in the astral realm with her role's arbitration system working autonomously. Primals usually rely on their cores to stay manifested, but coreless primals rely on other things or intermediaries to stay manifested. For example, a primal beast called the World created the Arcarum primal beast, and these primal beasts rely on pacts made with the Arcarum card and another person to be able to stay manifested in the world. Arcarum primal beasts also have cores. The world created these out of multiple other dead cores, and the world holds control over these cores, but not the pacts formed with the evokers. So if the world dies, they will not vanish because of the pact. Another similar scenario would be Sandalphon. Lucifer was ordered by Lucilius to create him. However, he has a core. He has a core because Lucilius was the one to give him one mid-creation. Only astrals handle the productions of cores. Given that primals without cores are just a ball of astral power, all Lucilius needed to do is add a core at that point, because astral power in a core is needed to create primal beasts. As I mentioned previously, the Arcarum primal beasts have pact bearers called evokers, all having their own stories and agendas. Another example of pacts would be primals being pact-bound to an island. Examples of such primal beasts would be the ones from the Fentagranda Skydom or primal beasts from Zegraganda Skydom in Relink. It is said that the astrals installed the primals on each island as to subjugate them. In the Zegraganda Skydom, that was the goal, but also to have their primal beasts worshipped by the sky dwellers and to study the concept and effects of faith. Given that they say installed, that should mean they're bound to the island via a pact. The term primeval god in Relink seems to be a callback to when Zayn, a man in charge of a church that worships primals and astrals, mentions that when a primal has a pact with an island, it gains primeval power, which is really just another way of saying a primal beast will gain power through its pact with an island, as well as the faith of the island's inhabitants. Primeval god is religious lingo in Granblue for primal beasts. Another example of this can be seen from Sophia, a Zayn priestess. She calls the site where the war, an event where sky dwellers fought the astrals for their freedom, a holy ground. Additionally, astrals installing their primal beasts onto islands, or in other words, having them pact-bound to islands, is also said to be an assault strategy by the astrals to subjugate sky dwellers. When it came to Rosetta's case, she was someone who the astrals had pact-bound to an island, and was originally named the primal beast Rose Queen. Her mission was to stop any sky dweller uprising that opposed astral rule. However, she eventually loses to them after their several rebellion attempts because the sky dwellers adapted to Rosetta. This forces her to ultimately flee the island she had a pact to. In the present day, Io gains a pact with Rosetta, while Rakam and Yugen gains pacts with Tiamat and Leviathan, all thanks to Zayn's help. He called it the innermost teachings. This sort of thing is something used to bring out more of a primal's power and use them for their intended purpose, as weapons. This method derived from astrals, and understandably, they can draw out power beyond a primal's limit compared to mortals. Astrals and sky dwellers are capable of merging with cores or the primal itself to become primal beast hybrids. The most notable example is Beelzebub. Upon Vaya striking a deal with Lucilius to save his own life from fatal wounds, while Lucilius furthers his own plans, he is given an archangel primal core. Enduring a ton of pain in the process of the fusion, when it is over, he sprouts metal wings and healed from his fatal wounds. Lucilius is another person who fused with a primal beast. In summary, after Lucilius was decapitated by Lucifer, Lucilius was comatose due to astrals being immortal. Eventually, Beelzebub decapitates Lucifer, and his body is stolen so that Lucilius's head can be sewn onto Lucifer's body. This leads Lucilius to adjust himself to the primal beast body. Strangely, it still has its core still intact. In Granblue Relink, Lilith, who was revealed to be an astral, fused with the primal beast Angra Mainyu, simply by just offering her body to it, but gained control over the primal regardless.
この力の流れは聖少獣と融合しようとしている。星の民の尊厳を捨ててまで己の命をつなぐというの？門を司る聖少獣アンラマイユ、その力一切合切を我に委ねよ。このリリスに行使せしめん。
来ます。とてつもない何かが。
極まりない消し去ってくれる
Despite this, though, it's stated that she lost her sense of reason. There are also humans who have also fused with primal beasts. In order to save the stability of her mind through nightmares she was having of Catalina and her own past, Luminera helps her out and in the end, merges with Vera, making Vera part primal beast. Lu Hua, who is mortal and based off of Lu Bu, fused together with the red hair, who is a primal beast.
どういうことだよ。なんだよ青少獣石飛ばって。
水を占領した際の戦利品だ。強者にしか首を垂れぬ気ぐらいの高い獣でな。主なく水に祀られていたのを我が己の力をもって召し抱えたのだ。しかしこの程度で驚いてもらっては困るな。貴様らが相対するのはこの石飛ばでもこのローファでもない。人馬一体将軍こそ貴様らを葬る者の名だ。
あれは非将軍ローファが青少獣石飛ばと一体となった姿です。
青少獣と一体に？青少獣っていうのは大体そういうものなのか？
団長殿たちにとっても想定を超えた存在のようですね。
Though upon being defeated, Lu Hua is split from it. Lastly, we have Lukov. Lukov is an antagonist in a story event called Full Metal Man, The Last Mission. Suffering injuries, he finds something called the Key. This key is in actuality Socialist's primal beast core. And in a similar fashion to Beelzebub, he jams the core into his fatal wounds. And not only fully recovers, but becomes part primal beast.
イングベイ。
ルカーブ、意識があるのか？なんだかわからんが、そいつはよかった。さっきの怪我は。
There are primals that can be considered to be, or are created to be, related to one another. This is usually due to the primal itself creating a coreless primal. So for example, Cosmos created Zoe and Geo. Geo considers Zoe to be her sister for this reason through mortal logic. Neptune considers Poseidon to be her sibling simply because both have similar roles within a gust. Neptune's is to protect marine life, whereas for Poseidon, he just protects the sea. When it comes to Zeus, an astral created Europa from his core. I say this because there is no way for a primal beast to do that to themselves in core form. Zeus, via the use of mortal standards, says he is Europa's father. Then there's Medusa. Medusa was directly created to have siblings, each with their own separate cores and were programmed to be siblings. It was also revealed through Medusiana, Medusa's familiar, that it shares the same blood with Medusa and her sisters, showing that Medusa has an artificial blood relation to her sisters, meaning that the Gorgon sisters may be the closest thing towards being actual siblings compared to other primals. Baal and Zoe would say they could sense the primal related to them. This is because primal beasts are born knowing the connection between the one they are created with or from. Additionally, this is how Zeus found Europa, and how Europa recognized Zeus on sight despite it being her first time ever seeing him.
あなたをゼウス様。お会いするのは初めてですが、私はあなたを知っている。
Zoe describes this to be something similar to Gran and Lyria's lifelink. except there's no repercussions from being too far away from one another. At times, primals are generalized based on when they are created, such as when Neptune spoke of Poseidon being in the same generation as him with similar roles, or how Nasia and Grimnir are called war gods, or the primal beasts of 2,000 years ago. Who are the earliest beasts ever created? Well, let's go over all of that. Origin primal beasts are from 2,000 years ago, created to be world regulators and holding the ability to manipulate an aspect of the world in some way. Like, for example, Olivia having power over dusk, or the Primarchs. Angel primal beasts were created in this time period and are origin beasts. Cosmos, too, is another example. The primal beast of arbitration, created as a system to regulate the world's balance. On the other hand, solely during this same time period, there were multiple copies of lesser origin primal beasts, such as Callisto, a bear, or Abaddon, a large praying mantis. There's also the Angel, Archangel, Virtue, and Dominion cores. These things have their primal cores exposed with wings and a halo. They are often used as drones and are seen as expendable.
そうか。話せてよかった。では、バーチャーズ、後始末を。魔物！だが、この奇妙な物体は…
行け、お前たち。
1,000 years later and onwards, during the middle part of this time period, there were also other primals that were created with different specific roles for different reasons, such as forming pacts with islands to subjugate sky-dwellers, or being used to infiltrate sky-dwellers to learn and steal from them for their personal gain. Then here we have the war primals, created for the purpose of warfare and fighting primarily when the war began. They're said to have been created based on the algorithm of the origin beasts, ensuring that they are guaranteed to be strong characters. Like I showed earlier, the most obvious indicator of a war primal is that they call themselves or are known as a war god or god of war. With that said, primal beasts aren't gods, just godlike. Not all primal beasts who were created during the war are called war gods either. Enyo, for example, is the primal beast of trampling and destruction, as per her role of doing so. During the war, the Astrals saw use in her ability to endlessly summon wolves, so they sought to multiply that ability by cloning Enyo. But the clones could not replicate what the original could do well enough. Then there's Svaha, a recent one, is the primal beast of desire, created to sow chaos by using his ability to grant desires or mentally mess with their heads. So there's a reason why I say around 500 years ago on this timeline to represent the war, because it says the aftermath of the war was roughly 500 years ago, showing that the war ended 500 years ago, and yet it is also ongoing during that time on its way to its conclusion. Additionally, we don't know when it specifically started. Medusa, who is shown to be a war primal with the Gorgon sisters, defeated a monster 616 years ago, showing that it is still the war period at that given time, because war primals are created for the war. Additionally, after the war ended, 2 of the Gorgon sisters shut down due to their role, or their purpose being over, and slept in core form. Much like the other primal beasts created for the war, as they all have a large chance or tendency to revert to core form afterwards. On top of that, it says that the sisters have been in multiple other fights besides that monster alone. A visual representation of the war period between the time Medusa and her sisters took out that monster and the aftermath of the war on a timeline would look like this. So this is basically the generational categories of primal beasts, from oldest to newest, or oldest to youngest in a sense, not that the age matters much, though at the end of the day, they can all be called primal beasts regardless. Primal beasts are said to possess godlike power as weapons of the astrals, their rampages and power being comparable to even a natural catastrophe or calamity. A single primal beast is said to be stronger than entire groups of soldiers. Athena even stating that someone like Medusa can threaten the very realm, as many primal beasts can, if not worse. And her clashing with Athena quickly changes the landscape. Another example, Alexiel and Parashurama had a physical confrontation that sent shockwaves into the air and shook it along with the ground they stood on. Primals also have a small region factor, and depending on the primal beasts, such as those with the ability to heal, it can be better than the average primal. They can be pretty resilient, survive harsh attacks. Primals can also have resistances to certain temperatures and elements, and can choose to shut off those resistances. Another thing about a primal strength is that they have enough strength to have their entire arm impale someone's chest. For example, Geo did this very thing to Cybele. Or how Svaha did this to himself, to rip out a bone from out of his body to give someone access to his power.
私はお前に答えよう。
何をしておる！
これをお前に渡そう。私を形作る骨格、骨の一つだ。これを持っていればお前の位置がわかる。そこにこの異空間を接続できるはずだ。
そのようなことができるのか？
お前の願い次第だ。私はどのような願いも叶えることができる。
Not all primals have this kind of physical strength, like Medusa, for example. She was kidnapped by Perseus, a mortal who had gear that shut down Medusa's power. She is usually the type of primal who relies on her power rather than the physical strength that she kinda lacked. Like how she relies on Medusiana here, who is a part of Medusa and her sister's power due to being their familiar. There are also primals that can fly without wings. Some primals rely on their familiar to fly, and of course there are primals that fly with the use of their own wings.
貴様の望みを叶えてやったぞ。これで兵たちは手が出せまい。
あれは、オーディン様。しまった。我々の火星を足止めするための策だったか。
Not to mention, there's a bear just standing on the air alongside a praying mantis and some drones sent to attack Sandalphon. All of this took place in midair. When you see Alexiel, Raziel, and Noir, it seems normal from a fictional perspective, as people may be used to seeing things like this. But realistically speaking, these characters are lifting a large weapon with zero effort. This is also a testament to a primal strength, and something that none of the Sky Dwellers races could ever do unless there was something enhancing them. To better blend in with mortals, all primals can unmanifest the things related to them being a primal, or more specifically, related to being a living weapon, in order to make themselves look more mortal and less dangerous.
"知るか。さっさと答えろ。青少獣ならば容赦はしないぞ。
貴様。
答える気がないのなら、その頭蓋を割って、中を覗いてみればわかるか。
やってみろ！傲慢な空の民よ！
沈め！口ほどにもない。
なんだ、何かが来る。この不吉な気配を俺は知っている。
Though primals at times don't even bother using new attire, because whatever they have on in terms of armor or clothes blends in perfectly enough already. When it comes to elements that these primals have, the way these primal characters utilize the elements are various and unique, like for example Grimnir and Nasia. Grimnir is known for his wind attacks having to do with cyclones and tornadoes. Nasia's intrinsic element is wind, but he commands the element of fire alongside it as a sub-element. A well-known technique, Paradise Lost, fires multiple beams of light, capable of decimating its target, such as how Lucilius essentially used Lucifer's power to destroy an entire island in mere moments. On the other hand, Tsukuyomi can turn the sky to night and use the moon to fire a ray of moonlight through you instantly.
荒ぶる者よ。去りなさい。
Uni could do that to the sky too, and perhaps do something much worse. Whereas Shiva can just use his full strength to destroy a fabric of reality and then just bring it back.
古き者よ、古き地よ。我が雷帝は、アスラに汚されしこの世のすべてを破壊する。アスパターストラ！
なあ、トリプラ軍闘は本当に何もなくなっちまったのか？シバのやつ、全部破壊するって言ってたけど、まさか空までなくなっちまうなんて。
案ずることはない。
Even given all that I displayed here, there was a primal beast that even Bahamut, God itself through his will, didn't allow the completion of. Who I speak of is Fenrir. Astrals had all the freedom to create almost anything they wanted for a primal beast, but there was a person who went too far. In the end, this person created Fenrir, the God-slaying primal beast, as a means to kill God. But due to being a primal beast with a body that wasn't meant to handle power capable of slaying God, due to Bahamut rejecting Fenrir's existence that resulted in the incompletion of Fenrir as a primal beast, it threatened to kill her if it was used. She was given another false power, which was her power over ice. That came alongside the chains she had to hide this power, and was then marked for disposal as she was told that her creation was a mistake by other astrals. The last ability that primals seem to have is the ability to become larger, though they will still look the same. This is something that has went on to be unexplained since the game's release, with nothing really talking about how this works. It is unknown if this is linked to just gaining power, like with what happened to Sandalphon when he brought out all of his wings after stealing them all. Or like what happens to Rose Queen as she forms a pact with someone or something to bring out more of her power. On the other hand, in the anime, we can see Titan, a primal who was giant in size, shift down the human size just for a wrestling match. Clearly, the size difference is an issue. And then there's Cosmos, who was kinda large at first but returned in human size. There are also raids that depict primals as large, but they aren't like that when you meet them, and you never see them get like that in the story. It's a confusing matter on whether or not all primals can do that, or it's just linked to just having power in general. But it will perhaps be formally explained in detail in the future. Now to speak about the history of primal beasts. When the Omnipotent, the original Bahamut, was split in a rebellion against him, he was split into two versions of himself, the Sky God version of Bahamut and the Astral God version of Bahamut. They went into two opposite directions. The Sky God stayed in the Sky Realm, and the Astral God left to create the Astral Realm. The Astral God created a complete copy of the Sky Realm alongside its ecology with notable differences. While the Sky Realm is all about change within the cycle of destruction and rebirth the Sky God represents, the Astral Realm was the opposite due to the dragon only having the ability to create. It was a place of stagnation, meaning it could never change. The Astrals in their realm is heavily implied to be highly advanced, compared to the underdeveloped Sky Realm, which was just a bunch of floating islands. So when they first spotted the Sky Realm 2,000 years ago and arrived there through unknown dimensional means, they first decided to introduce airships. This was done through their creation of Noah, the primal beast of shipbuilding, who was created in the astral realm. The Sky Dwellers had no idea at all that there was other islands. However,
気空艇の存在によって、人々は世界がずっと広かったことを知った。けれど、自由に行き来ができなければ意味がない。当時、バラバラに分断されていた空の世界を統治するために、星の民はまず、気空艇を増産する必要があった。そして星の民は、気空艇建造のための労働力として、空の民を集め、建造現場を効率的に指揮する役目を僕に課したんだ。気空艇を作るために働く空の人々にとって僕は、望まぬ厳しい労働を強いる、恐怖の存在だっただろうね。
そんなことは。
もちろん、恐怖で人々を縛り付けていたつもりはないよ。けれど、結果としては、そうなってしまっていたんだ。
From there on, more primal beasts meant to regulate the skies and have better control over the realm were created. The original primal beasts, known as the earliest primal beasts ever created 2,000 years ago. The astral realm is said by Roland to be a location that can't be judged by distance, similarly to how Noah describes Estelucia. So it can be traveled to from anywhere as it's in another dimension. It is said that there was once as many primal beasts as there were stars, which is honestly quite insane to really think about. With the production of airships in the Sky Realm, the Astrals subjugated the islands in the Sky Realm, which caused it to develop even further. Each island had their own currency or no concept of it, but with the production of airships came the unification of currency across the Sky Realm. According to the origin primal beast Berceau, it was then mass-produced and called a rupee. In the present day, with the Astrals gone, the Sky Dwellers appropriate the leftover things the Astrals introduced to them. When the Astrals came to the Astral Realm, they noticed a vicious, unending storm known as the Grim Basin. So they took control of that too by creating and using the primal beast Gwenab. They then used the Grim Basin to divide the Skydoms. And the only way to traverse through the Grim Basin is by the sky map pieces. A skydom is like a country of islands, whereas the map piece are not physical objects, but power and information. They are on each island of a skydom, governed by a placed primal beast on each island that has been subjugated in a skydom. The sky map pieces of a skydom are then used to open up the way in the Grim Basin to traverse out of a skydom and into the next. Given that the sky map pieces are just the culmination of power and information created by the Astrals, they are also astral technology, that of which are said to be incomprehensible to Sky Dwellers, and speaks more on how Astrals are more technologically advanced than the Sky Dwellers. Primal beasts are also astral technology due to being living weapons of the Astrals. The airships, too, are also astral technology. Due to the imbalance of the tetra elements, Lucilius created the 4 Primarchs to properly stabilize it. Lucifer was created far beforehand to oversee evolution for Lucilius's research. Later, the Origin Beast Rebellion was orchestrated by Lucilius and Belial to get Primal Beast cores in order to create Avatar because he despises God and all that he stands for. He intends to use it to destroy the world.
反乱？ただの波状的に広がった暴動だろう。おかげで獣を作った俺も疑われたものだ。その疑惑は真実でないと。その疑惑は真実であると。首謀者は君だ。ほう。君の直接指揮下にある天使が各地で先導していたのだろう。反乱が失敗することもまた君の目論見の範疇だった。なぜだ？星の民である君にとって大量のコアを効率的に得るためだ。おかげで近畿の実験が可能になった。それで話は終わりか、ルシフェル。何をしようとしている？君の目的は進化の研究だったはずだ。その行動と一致しない。進化の行く末、その結論は出た。お前もすでに行き着いているのだろう。空も星も人間も、その身を割いた創生神のホメオスタシスに過ぎ。あてがわれたゆりかごの中で神の都合に振り回されるだなどと。極めて不愉快だ。お前はそうは思わないか。小石を積み上げ塔を築くがごとく、無数のコアをつないだ実験体もすべて神を否定するための代物というわけだ。その反抗心のために世界を滅ぼす可能性を作り続ける気か。お前と見解を違えるのは分かっていた。ルシファー
Sandalphon was in this rebellion to get revenge on Lucifer for being created as what Sandalphon perceived to be a meaningless existence. He was created to be Lucifer's substitute, but Lucifer ended up being much better than anticipated, so Sandalphon ended up being useless. Eventually, Sandalphon and the other Origin beasts are defeated and locked inside of Pandemonium, the primal beast of the cycle of rebirth, a cage created to eternally cage them all. The primal beast Cerberus was additionally created as its watchdog to prevent any uprisings or trouble within it. Then lastly, the war, stated to be the largest war in Skyrealm history, stated to be around 500 years ago from the present day of the main story, and 1,500 years later from the time when the Astrals invaded the Skyrealm. The specific date of when the war started is unknown and is implied to have lasted multiple years. Medusa, who is a primal made for the war, existed with her sisters 616 years from the main story. Basara, the first canine divine general, was born during the war period. The divine generals lead Skydweller armies into combat during the war against the Astrals and their primal beasts. Many primal beasts were created with the role of fighting in the war in different ways pertaining to warfare. From the very moment they are born, they are told to join the battlefield. There were primals who got along with Skydwellers and were showing signs of not following what they were created to do and were thinking for themselves. These instances played a part in the downfall of the Astrals in the war.
聖少獣も本来は時の流れの影響を受けぬ存在。けれど、空の民は違う。成長し、関わり合い、影響を与えられて変化していく生き物。戦場という生も負も、生も濁も、激しく感情の渦巻く場で空の民たちと接し続ければ、聖少獣たちにも変化が現れるのは必然だったのかもしれない。
バルドルさんの他にもいるんですね。星の民に与えられた役割と、空の民との間で苦しんでいた聖少獣が。
戦争の末期には空の民へと寝返る聖少獣が増えた。そして、それは星の民にも言えること。
Giving a primal beast sentience was necessary in giving them orders, and having them report back to their astral masters. But they overlooked one thing, and that is Primals developing a free will.
役割と願いと私たちはどうしてどちらも満たされるように作られなかったのかしらね。
Noticing that the war was shifting out of their favor, the Astrals deploy their trump card, the Primal Beast, Azidahaka. With its battle cry, it causes the Primal Beasts who hear it on the battlefield to outright force them to eliminate Sky Dwellers. But it had a flaw. Hitting a Primal hard enough is enough to snap them out of it, while being conscious of Azidahaka's ability to mind control offers resistance against it. Taking advantage of this flaw and hating the fact that their free will was being taken away by the Astrals, who could not care any less about their wants or needs, they revolt against Azidahaka and destroy it.
不当に支配されることを厭った聖少獣たちがアジダハーカーを討ち取ったことで、やがて破空戦争は終結に向かったの。
Following the war's end, the Astrals make a retreat back into their realm. One of their means of doing this was through the God Realm. It was a dimensional base between the Sky Realm and the Astral Realm, guarded by the Primal Beasts Alexiel and Belung. The other method they have is through the use of Angra Mainyu, the primal beast of gates that open up dimensional gates and was used as a means of an astral or other primal beast's means of transportation between the astral and sky realms. Unfortunately for the Astrals, there was a trap waiting for a lot of them that tried to escape. The Divine Buddhas, the ones above the Divine Generals and the ones who formed that group, created a dimensional trap known as the Nexus Labyrinth Dharma. It was designed to capture escaping Astrals or Astrals and Primals who tried to come as reinforcements and trap them in a dimensional labyrinth of a fake sky realm. A nexus is described as a zone between the astral and sky realms. The Divine Generals clean house on their enemies and get a portion of them trapped in there. With the war concluded, the war's aftermath leads to the Astrals' departure and their primal beasts abandoned in the sky realm. While the sky dwellers fought for freedom, the war and its aftermath gave Primals the chance to face themselves. The Primals were now facing an inner struggle between their wants or desires and the technological part of themselves. In other words, their duty or role, their reason for being, whether or not they should continue following it. While there are Primals with goals of their own or having a role that coincides with it and chose to go a different path. Some who couldn't make the choice fell asleep in core form, as it was the only way Primals knew how to live. There were those who ended up in core form also because they were drained from their role as war Primals. The list of how they suffered goes on. They have freedom, but because of their roles, they can't comprehend that properly. The fact that they are immutable is an obstruction to their progress. Lucifer took notice to all of this, saying that they're essentially trapped between two worlds. As Nezha would say, it's only natural for Primals to stay the same due to being immutable. With that being said, we would soon learn that despite this being true for Primal Beasts, with the help of Sky Dwellers, they can change a little in their mindset to adjust to a new lifestyle or even gain more power. With Lucifer at a loss at what to do, Cosmos as her own duplicate shows up. Her true self is asleep in the astral realm as the autonomous arbitration system. It is due to this system that Cosmos is here to make sure the Sky Realm heals from the scars of war properly, or things will get even more out of hand between the Primals and Sky Dwellers as the scales begin to go off balance. Her job is to balance that scale. She helped Primals fit in by having them be a part of the Sky Dwellers' culture and civilization. Examples being Tiamat and Sylph being deified. Fiendrak is then built around Sylph, having Luminera form a pact with an island instead of people who can't handle having a pact with her, and lastly giving some Primals the ability to evolve in order to maintain the power balance. Over time, Primal Beasts are more accepted by Sky Dwellers, no thanks to Cosmos and Lucifer. With the help of Sky Dwellers, Primals can be helped to evolve alongside them.
いい天気。ティアマトのご機嫌がいいうちにお買い物済ませちゃおう。
おやまあ、最近の若い子はティアマト様を呼び捨てにして、バチが当たっても知らんよ。
バチっておばあちゃん。伝説相手にいつまでそんなこと言ってるのよ。
伝説なんかじゃないよ。ティアマト様は本当にいなさる。
はいはい。ポートブリーズに吹く風は全部ティアマトの息吹ってやつね。
ティアマト様は美しい女性だそうだ。私が生まれる少し前、町の近くに姿を現して激しい嵐を消してくださったんじゃよ。
何回も聞いたよ、おばあちゃんの昔話は。どっちでもいいけど、ポートブリーズの風が気持ちいいのは事実だからさ。ティアマトにはずっとご機嫌でいてほしいな。
なんでうまくいかねえんだ。バランスか。重量は揃えてるはずなのに。
ちょっと設計図を見せてくれるかな。
そりゃいいけど、古いもんだからあちこち欠けてるぞ。
大丈夫、全部覚えてるから。でも念のためにね。なるほど。この書き込みは君が？
いや、それは多分前に整備したやつだな。
さっき船を見た時にも思ったんだけれど、この部分、ここ、傷んだ木材の補強に使っている素材が良くないみたいだね。湿気で膨張してしまって船全体のバランスが崩れてしまっているんだ。
はあ、湿気か。なるほどな。こりゃ確認し直さねえと。いや、さすがだよノア。お前さんにはかなわね
え。役に立てたのならよかった。でも君たちの技術だって素晴らしいものだ。船を大切にしてくれてありがとう。
風と水のレゾナンスが耳に心地いい。
おお、これはすごい。
なぜこんなところに人が？
いやいや、それこっちのセリフだよ。兄ちゃん、いい音出すな。こんな誰もいないところで演奏するだけなんてもったいないじゃないか。
いや、この場所でこそ奏でられる音だ。
へえ、なるほど。面白いこと言うな。ますます気に入ったぜ。俺の町の連中にも聞かせてやりたい。兄ちゃん、俺の町に来て演奏しないか？
騒がしい場所は好まない。
まあ確かにここみたいに静かで気持ちのいい場所じゃないかもしれないが、町の喧騒にはそりゃあそれで良さがあるもんだ。それこそ町の喧騒の中でこそ奏でられる音もあるんじゃないかい？
そうだろうか。
きっとそうさ。それに音楽は誰かに聴いてもらってなんぼだろ？
それは一理あるな。
それじゃ来てくれるか？
わかった、行こう。新しい音に出会えるのなら悪くない。
シルフ様、あなたは？子供を見るのは久しぶり。
私、ごめんなさい。勝手に入ってしまって。
謝らなくてもいいのに。
私、シルフ様に会いたかったの。会って、お礼が言いたかったの。
お礼？どうして？私、あなたに会うのは初めてのはず。
私ね、お父さんが病気だったの。でもね、お城からもらったお薬で良くなって、お父さんとお母さんがね、シルフ様のおかげだよって言ってたから。
私の薬、アルマを飲んだのか。
お父さんが良くなってね、お母さんも泣かなくなったの。私もね、ご飯も美味しくて。お父さんが久しぶりに抱っこしてくれて、でも私、もう大きいからいいのよって言って。
大きさが関係あるの？抱っこしてもらいたいと思うなら、たくさんしてもらえばいいのに。
でも、お隣の姉ちゃんは、私と同い年なのに、もうお姉ちゃんになるのよ。だから私も、もう抱っこは卒業して、お手伝いもたくさんするの。
お手伝いはいいと思う。私も昔はよくした。
シルフ様も、どんなお手伝いをしたの？
薪を拾ったり、水を汲んだり、畑を掘り返したり、いろいろ。
わー、すごーい！
もう、ずっと昔のことだけど。
私も頑張らなきゃ。だから今日はまずね、一人で来たの。シルフ様、お父さんにお薬をくれてありがと
う。気にしないで。会いに来てくれてありがとう。
That concludes my video on Primal Beasts Explain. This video was larger than I anticipated, but as you can see, there's a lot to this race. While primals are meant to be these perfect creations, they too have flaws and are capable of being no different from the Sky Dwellers. These things alongside their lore, personalities, and designs is why primal beasts are my favorite race. I hope those that watch this video learn something new. Many thanks for watching.